It got hot in the cab. The rover already smelled sour, and Myra caught a strong whiff of Teddy's sweat. They had reached the crest of Adil's ridge, and the road began a series of switchbacks descending to the plain. At the hairpin turns, the drop-offs were 100 meters or more. Between breaks in the hills she could see ahead of them glittering fields of solar collectors, and in the distance the domed crater that was home. Though the rover's brain running off the LPS network was quite adequate to negotiate the twisting road, Teddy hovered over the controls. A damp strand of hair had come undone from his ponytail and hung by his cheek. A red light started blinking on the control panel. The piano music stopped, and a voice began. "This is a constabulary alert. A child—" Teddy touched a key on the board, and the voice snuffed out, replaced again by the piano. Neither of them said anything. After a while, Myra said, "I don't care for this music. It's crippled. How come you like it?" "There's a piano in the Warren," Teddy said. "I play it sometimes." "Are you any good?" "I could never play Alcan. On a good day, I can play a slow rag with only a couple of mistakes." "You live in the Warren?" "Yes." "Don't you have any family?" "My mother died a long time ago. I lived with my Aunt Sonia for a while. I've never been married." "How old are you?" "I'm 60. Myra pulled her feet up onto the seat and hugged her knees. "What a waste," she muttered. "What?" "Nothing. What happens to you when they find out you took this rover?" "I can explain the situation. You'll tell them about your mother, won't you? They'll go easy once they hear that." "You think so? They told me not to come home. I was in retreat." "Some things are more important than retreat. Your director will understand once she thinks about it." "But if they don't understand, what will you do?" "I suppose they'll bust me back to the rack farms, collar me, and put me on probation. I've worked there before. It's not so bad. All the fresh tomatoes you can eat." The more Myra thought about it, the more miserable she felt. "But it won't come to that, Myra," Teddy said. "You've got to have more faith in people's goodwill." They were down on the plain now, running straight as an arrow between fields of solar collectors toward the colony. Machines moved through the fields, removing dust from the faces of the collectors. It wouldn't be long now. "I lied," Myra said. "My mother isn't sick." Teddy looked at her. His blue eyes were wide and clear. His ears poked out sideways, and his lips were pursed. He looked like a clown. "That medical display. What about—" "Don't be such an idiot, Teddy." He turned back to the road and gripped the wheel. "You tricked me," he said quietly, and after a moment, staring straight ahead out the window, "You're not the first, probably won't be the last." Myra didn't say that they would probably think he had abducted her. It was the blackest crime the Society of Cousins could imagine. They would shove him into the stereotype of their worst nightmares. Probably already had. She could save herself a lot of trouble by simply going along with that story. Teddy was silent the rest of the way. The rim wall rose before them. At its base shone the lights of the south airlock. Another rover sped out to meet them. A couple of figures in surface suits who were riding on its back hopped off and skipped along beside Teddy's rover. Myra saw the constable's insignia on their shoulders. They pointed forcefully at the airlock entrance. Teddy nodded and waved at them. Through the maze and into the open vehicle airlock they went. The other rover followed them in. More constables piled out. The constables stood impatiently on both sides of Teddy's rover while the air was pumped into the lock. The constable on Myra's side was a woman, and the three on Teddy's were two women and a man. The minute pressure was equalized, they yanked the rover's doors open. "Don't hurt him," Myra yelled, but they had already seized Teddy by the collar and dragged him onto the floor. At the constabulary headquarters, they questioned Myra and Teddy in different rooms. Myra told the truth, but they did not want to believe it. Then, eventually, they seemed to believe it. Next came the scolding from Myra's mother. The constables reached her at Tranquility Spa, and after explaining the situation, turned Myra over to her. The screen seemed huge. Her mother was wearing a fancy low-cut blouse Myra had never seen before. Myra tried not to look her in the eyes. "How can I trust you?" her mother kept saying. "In a year and a half you're supposed to be an adult." She and Richard were cutting short their vacation and would be home in another day. Myra kept asking the constables what they were going to do with Teddy, but they wouldn't tell her. She insisted that they let her see him. Instead, they put a collar on Myra and took her home. At least the constable who dropped her off let her go in alone. It was 01:30 when she opened the door to the apartment and almost tripped stepping in. Marco had taken all of her horses off the shelf and set them on the floor. There was a whole herd of them, bays and blacks and pintos and palominos, some prancing with foreleg raised and neck arched, others ears laid back in full gallop, others rearing with nostrils flared, and others standing square on four legs, others with heads bent to crop the fabric floor. There were mares and foals, yearlings and ponies, stallions with little bumps between their hind legs to indicate they were boys. Some were 20 centimeters tall, others so tiny Myra could hide them in the palm of her hand. Marco lay on the floor next to them, fully dressed, asleep with his head on his arm. Myra tiptoed through the field of horses and crouched down beside him. The sidewise shadows of the horses cast by the nightlight fell on his face. When she touched his shoulder, he stirred. His eyelids fluttered, and he blinked them open. It took him a moment to realize who she was. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "You were supposed to stay with Grandmother Astrid." He rubbed his eyes and sat up. A crease ran across his cheek from where he had been lying on the sleeve of his shirt. "It's boring there, so I came home. I can take care of myself." She didn't bother to disagree with him. "The constables called looking for Mum," Marco said. "They said you would be sent home. What happened?" "I'll tell you in the morning." She helped him get up and steered him half asleep toward his bedroom. She managed to get him into his bed, then sat down on the edge. "Are you in trouble?" he asked. "I'll just tell Mum it's your fault." She poked him in the side. "That usually works." "Ha ha," he said, eyelids drooping. "Mum's on to that one." He let out a big sigh, and his eyes fell shut. "Thank you for setting out the welcoming committee," Myra said. "Knew you'd need some friendly faces," Marco whispered. His breathing became regular, and he fell asleep. Myra went back into the living room and began to gather up the horses to return them to her room. It wouldn't do for their mother to come home and find them all over the floor. As she did so, she wondered, for the first time, how Marco spent the nights when everyone else was away. She had imagined it as a great freedom, one of the many privileges boys had over girls. Boys didn't get sent to retreats. When Marco wasn't being fawned over by some matron, he got to do whatever he wanted. He could hang out at the men's house, stay up as late as he liked, meet with friends, and pull pranks all night. But what if he just stayed home alone? That would get old fast. It would feel like nobody cared about you enough to pay attention. Myra realized that being left alone wasn't always a privilege. Teddy was left alone. He was invisible. Myra didn't want Marco to end up invisible. Marco was her if she had been born a boy. Their mother had grown him from one of Myra's own cells, with Myra's X chromosome switched to a Y, the only difference between them. When Myra had arranged the last of the horses on her shelves, she took Comet out of her pocket and set him in front. The little horse stared back at her, his long, noble face intelligent and alert. She knew she would never really have a horse. Horses didn't make any sense on the moon. She went back out to the living room and sat in a chair, waiting for their mother to come home.